While many of us continue to process the attack we saw unfold on Capitol Hill Wednesday, parents are facing an added challenge, explaining to their children exactly what happened. Viewing extreme violence and terrorism can affect a child's mental and emotional health, but experts say it's important to give kids space to work through their own thoughts on current events. But how do you assess when it becomes too much, or if a child actually understands? For more insight, let's bring in parenting and education expert, Dr. Karen Aronian. Doctor, thanks so much for being with us. So we know that kids are sponges when it comes to absorbing information. I don't have a kid, but I used to be one. And I understand that they register information, and the way that they register that information can impact their lived experience. So kids are dealing with COVID-19. The repercussions of COVID-19, lockdown, not being able to see their friends. They are dealing with probably a dynamic in a lot of people's homes when it comes to politics. And now they are seeing these images that they've seen, not just of the Capitol, but also of the Black Lives Matter protest that we saw over the summer, the image of George Floyd having his life snuffed out. How do parents talk to their children at this moment, at this point in time in our history? It's really got to be tough.
Indeed, it truly is. And it's at a time right now where we want to really partner together with our schools. And we want to be both working with information that we can deliver to our children that is going to be helpful and going to comfort them at this time. And in doing that, first off, we're going to be listening to them. They already have a lot of information coming their way they need to process. And we want to hear what they have to say. And we want to have them work through that with empathy. We're hearing them. We're helping them to name what those feelings are. And then we're asking of them, we're suggesting to them to give us input. And then with that input, again, we're going forward with having civil discourse, sharing what is civil discourse. And again, modeling what we are going to do to get through this and go forward. And we're bringing positivity. And at the same point, we're being extremely careful with how we label and the language and what our attitudes are in the home so that we can model best practices.
You know, Doctor, these are sort of uncomfortable topics for adults to just talk to with other adults, much less children. And I think, you know, the thing about kids sometimes is that it's difficult to figure out whether or not they're being impacted negatively or not. I have a 9-year-old. Very early on in the pandemic, I noticed that her little drawings, she started to include masks on their face. Her Roblox character has a mask, and I thought, oh, I guess that's just how she's dealing with it. And you know, there were protests during the summertime, and the other day we were walking downtown, and I said, man, I haven't been downtown in a while, and she said, yeah, since the protests. And then yesterday she said, oh, they're descending on the Capitol. She saw what was happening. We were watching, cable news. And it's difficult to know whether, she's just sort of digesting and she's fine because this is her world. It may seem like a crazy thing for us because Vlad and I are adults and we know a different childhood, but for her, it's just another day, or whether she's absorbing it and it's having a negative impact. What should parents be looking out for to figure out whether or not their kid is handling this stuff well or badly?
Right. I like what you mentioned about the drawings, because that is a great way for children to process what they're going through. And so giving them those opportunities and paying attention to what you're seeing. And again, asking that of your schools as well, working again that partnership with teachers. They're imbuing a lot of a social, emotional help and support right now. So watch and see what's coming through to you from the schools, because a lot of the principals, the superintendents, the teachers, admins are offering their take and their input right now to be of a guide and to really lead us through this and to process this. Always with our kids, we want to hear what they have to say. We are, showing them how we're processing, what's our mood. And so we want to be mindful of that, how we wake up in the world every day and what we can see here potentially as a break in the clouds to bring this generation forward, which has had to process so much upheaval. And so again, looking at what they're going through, listening, checking in, don't deliver too much information that's not asked of you, because that's going overboard. And really be careful too about in your home. Don't have this radio or your Alexa or your television constantly on play, because this is a bombardment to our entire system. Remember, we want to go forward with peace. We want to go forward with love. We want to go forward with light. And we want to go forward with shared meaning to create a generation that are going to be best teachers, best parents. And so how can we come out of this and seize this opportunity to move in the correct direction?
So, Dr. Aronian, I mentioned that I used to be a kid, and I'm just thinking, as I was listening to you and Anne-Marie talking about this, I just thought back to my own childhood. And I was one of those kids who, it's probably why I became a reporter, because I was always sort of plugged into current events, but not always in a good way. For example, I watched that film the day after when I was a kid, and I thought we were all going to be annihilated in a nuclear-like war. I was convinced.
You're not the only one.
Right, exactly. I'm sure there are a lot of kids like me. But I was also convinced that Tab and hot dogs caused cancer, and that I was going to be in a hijacking, because there were a lot of hijackings in the 70s and 80s. I thought that, I'd be abducted, or my parents would be abducted, because I was watching all this information on the Iranian hostage crisis. And I don't recall my parents, this is not a reflection of them, but I don't recall they ever sat down with me and said, so let's talk about what you're worried about. So what do parents do with a kid like me who is sort of, and because of course, we didn't have the internet back then. So I'm already plugged in, and this is pre-internet. So now with the images that kids can have access to 24 hours a day, but let's say you have a kid who's not very talkative, who's a little bit of an introvert, and I know people are going to be surprised by that, but really, in my private life, I am an introvert. What do you do to a kid who's like that?
Again, monitor, filter the sources. Don't leave this endless chain running of bad news. You want to, again, think about what you're sharing with them and check in with them. Don't drill down further. Don't over bombard them with information. And at the same time, you deliver factual information. The school is releasing so many resources at this time, and our organizations in our community and our, religious houses, and again, places like Common Sense Media give guidance about correct programming, how to filter, and what is appropriate. And again, we have to always be looking at what is being delivered in our homes and what we're allowing them to watch and bear witness to. Yes, facts are important. And again, we are getting guidance from all of our schools at this time. So if you're not really certain about how to process this with your children, if you're not really certain about what sharing is too much, reach out to your educators, your admins, your counselors, your mental health therapists, and ask for their guidance to, start these conversations. We don't all have answers, and there is a degree of what's going around right now as positive toxicity. I'm okay, you're okay, it'll be okay. See, that just shuts down the barrier. When we're really trying to say, I hear you, I can relate, it's true, this is, beyond upsetting. Let's think about how do we want to treat others how we want to be treated. What have you seen or what have you heard that you would potentially want to discuss? Do you feel like you have the facts? So let's open this dialogue. But again, let's not go overboard, because they are getting it from the schools. They are getting it through their friends. And there can be an over dive down into dark depths. So again, we wake up every day with positivity and check in, check in.
I think that's all really good advice now with all this virtual learning. The infrastructure now is in place for parents out there to be able to access this stuff. The schools have it online. They have it on their website. You just got to dig a little and find it. And who knows, with the proper tools, what we could be developing is a generation that is tougher and able to deal with adversity in a way that is better than we would have had it been us as children. Dr. Karen Aronian, thank you so much.